Hello, everyone. We're back today. I know it's been. We're gonna next week. We will try to do this before the episodes come out. I don't like Tuesday releases. I will say that. I do appreciate the 9 o'clock a little bit more, but I don't love the Tuesday release thing. So maybe don't do that again because by the time I watch the episode and then we're ready to talk about it, the next episode's out. It's a whole big thing. Anyways, we're back. I'm joined by Shayla Brown as I am every week-ish plus sometimes 2 weeks to talk about whatever Star Wars thing is happening. Um, Thankfully, it's been a lot of TV shows, so it's kept us up on our toes. But how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yeah, it's there's a lot in these two episodes. I actually am probably the most prepared I've ever been for one of these podcasts. So that might make it flow a little bit better, or it won't. I don't know. We'll find out. But yeah, that'll be it's a change because normally I'm completely unprepared. So you know. With that being said, I think there is one thing we should address before we talk about the actual show. We will talk about the show, but like one thing in the show because I was at it. I was out I think last night, and I ran into someone who I know who likes Star Wars or used to like Star Wars. One of the people who used to like Star Wars but don't anymore because it's too Disney now. And he's watching the Acolyte, and so and he said, why is there a Jedi who's alive right now who shouldn't be alive? And so I felt like we should probably talk about that, because Ki-Adi-Mundi made an appearance in the show. I didn't assume it was him until apparently the credits said that it was him, and so that is what we are saying now. And so apparently he made a cameo, and everyone's like he shouldn't be alive right now. And I just want to say that the only evidence of his age that we have is Legends. And as everyone knows, Legends is not canon, and so that doesn't matter. So anyone who's saying that he should be dead, Legends is not canon, and therefore you're wrong. Okay, cool. We've done that.
Yeah.
Because
Did he even say anything? Like, I didn't even notice.
I mean, since I didn't notice it when I watched it, I've noticed it obviously since because people pointed it out to me. But people were complaining to me that he's supposed to be dead and they ruined Star Wars again. And so I had to go do the research. And if I have to do research, that makes me angry. So this is the thing. Yes, there were certain books that came out around the time of the Phantom Menace. By the way, just for people who don't know this, every book that came out and graphic novel that came out prior to Disney Star Wars is all Legends. Everything. And that is the general rule. So yes, if a book came out around the time of Phantom Menace, that is Legends, and so his age is not a factor. But yeah, anyways, so his age can be whatever he wants. He's clearly younger, apparently, in this, to the point where I didn't even recognize him. So who cares? Can we all move on now?
Maybe calm down and stop nitpicking. Like, what seems like a very brief cameo. Like, I don't know.
Oh, and then the other thing, and this is just a quote from. So there's the other part of this controversy, and then we will talk about the actual show. But I just want to address all of the annoying people online. So people got mad also the fact that he's in this because he says, as I'm sure you know, he says in the Phantom Menace, that quote he has never known, quote something like the Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years or something like that, or a millennium or something, like when Qui-Gon is saying, oh yeah, there might be a Sith alive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people are getting mad saying, well, he's talking about a master and a potentially bad person with the Force. So why would he be saying that if, like that in the Phantom Menace if he knew? And I actually really love the response given by one of the writers, Claire Kitchell, who is part of the writing team and who co-wrote episode 4. And basically the like a summary of what was about what this writer had said was that you know, he had never known about any Sith at the time, and they were just speculating, right? And on top of that, it kind of speaks to kind of the naivety and the kind of arrogance of the Jedi in the sense that they just didn't possibly see this as a possibility, right? And the fact that they overlooked this, like they overlooked Palpatine for the entire time that he was right under their noses, it just kind of speaks to, I guess, like their own level of arrogance, and that's something which we see often, and that's kind of one of the main themes of Star Wars, right? Is the Jedi are very arrogant and they believe they know best, and they refuse to be wrong. And so I think that it's a very intelligent point. I think this doesn't contradict the idea that Sith existed, because Sith is a term, right? Like we don't call Darth Vader a Sith Lord. I don't.
Yeah.
That's not the term we use, because that is just not what he was called, right? The Sith are a very specific thing, and just because you have a red lightsaber, or just because you use the Force in a different way, does not make you a Sith, right? Those aren't equivalent things.
It's the same with the Jedi in Ahsoka, Balin and Shin. They are not Sith.
No.
But they aren't Jedi.
They wouldn't be called Sith. Sith were a very specific term that was used during the prequel time, right?
Yeah.
Because they were related to separatists. That was the idea. They was not just everyone. So anyways, that's the whole, and there were Sith probably before that too, right? During the Old Republic times. But again, that isn't necessarily, like, they're not necessarily connected, and so you could be talking about some theoretical bad guy without any of that.
Yeah.
Also, the other person apparently made a cameo is Plo Koon. So
I heard that too, and that made me happy.
So you were right. I think you called that.
I think I did, now that you mention it. I wanted him to make a cameo, and there he was.
Well, I think you said he probably would make a cameo because he would have been alive at the time.
Yeah,
and I think I argued with you and said, no, he would not be alive at the time, or he would be, around. And you were right, and I was wrong. So, good. Once again, you make a prediction that it turns out to be 100% accurate.
Yay.
But yeah, so let's start with the episode that's the less fun. What did you think about they gave us a nice background to kind of who these characters are. I found it a little bit drier, I think, than I would have liked. But what did you think of that episode overall? I think it was called Destiny or something. I don't know.
Yes. I really liked it because I was intrigued by Osha and May in the first two episodes, but I don't know if I was necessarily hooked. And this added context and backstory that we still don't know the ending of clearly, makes me more intrigued and want to know the whole story and what went down, because we only saw Osha's point of view of that. And it makes me really curious to know, what did the Jedi do?
Well, so this is the thing, right? And it kind of I don't understand this, and maybe I'm just, again, maybe this is just my own ignorance kind of being a factor in this, but when I think about this show and I think about where everyone started, it feels like they did something terrible, right? That's why they one ended up on a planet in isolation, one ended up, basically becoming taking a vow of silence type thing. Mm-hmm. One, I don't just goes off to do some other stuff on some planet. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It seemed like they're all guilty of something. I mean, one of them literally just drank poison because he felt guilty.
Yeah.
So what did they do? Because they kind of just ends and they just leave. And so I'm like, is there another piece we're missing here? Is this not even the true story? I don't know.
I think so, because in episode 4, Soul tells Osha that she's going to have to face her past, and he also is going to have to face her past with her. So I think that indicates that there is something that happened that we don't know, and that she doesn't know either.
There might, yeah. Again, I don't it's interesting because when I think about it, the only way that this episode could work a little bit better is maybe it's the perspective in which it's being told. And what I mean by that is it's the I think there was a very intentional, I guess, they very much tried to intentionally tell it through the perspective of OSHA,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because everything was very much told through her eyes.
Mhm.
And I think it's interesting because it felt so intentional to the point where I think she's wrong. Like I don't think like I think that is intentionally misleading because
Mhm.
I think that again everything they showed, including you know the death of her mother, right? Like it was not shown explicitly.
Mhm.
She saw the end of it again as if it was just her us seeing it through her eyes. So I
Mhm.
I feel like there's more to it, maybe more to who started the fire
Mhm.
potentially,
Yeah.
or something to do with that because again that the other thing was, and I know I'm kind of taking up a lot of oxygen at the beginning of this, but um the it felt a lot like it was kind of sudden, right? Like everything kind of just fell apart so quickly.
Mhm.
I don't know like what your thoughts on that are, but
No, I agree, and I also like maybe it's just the audio description, but it never said anything about the bodies being burnt or anything. Like, and my friend said it didn't look like they died from a fire.
it was very hard. Like they very quickly kind of like what it looked like is it looked like something like the fire burned a piece of rock or something and it fell on them,
Mhm.
right? And I think that's kind of the implication that they're trying to make because again, they didn't really show the bodies all that much.
Mhm.
They did not look burned because that would be something which I think would be like they again, it's hard to tell, and I think there's a reason for that.
Mhm.
And the other interesting thing is obviously the audio description. Typically, if it's important, they tend to not like they tend to avoid, just like with subtitles, they tend to avoid kind of almost mentioning it because they don't want to like you know what I mean? Like they're kind of misleading you and they're trying to
Yeah.
make sure that you're misled
Yeah.
regardless, but not explicitly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I think that's also an interesting catch because I think that kind of makes it seem more intentional, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, I think I do think there's more to it. I don't know what it would be, but
I don't know either, but if it was just a fire, like they're witches, shouldn't they be able to put it out? Like I don't know.
well
If it
also
was
and
that simple.
well also May, when she started the fight, like it seemed like the way the moment played out was they were talking. Osha said, "I maybe I want to go be a Jedi." May says no, and then the way it kind of plays out is like it's between no, lock the door, and then decide to murder her.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and yeah, she does kind of say, "Yeah, I'm gonna kill you" or whatever, or "You're not gonna leave here alive" or something like that. But like,
Mhm.
you also think about in the context of siblings, like that is not something you would like. Even if you're not, you wouldn't. You may say that even if you're not being serious about that. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And going from I love my sister to I want to murder her, it feels like a within 10 seconds, not like literally 10 seconds. It feels very hard to believably make that jump.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, it'd be interesting. Like, again, I don't know what you think about if like, do you feel like that was intentional?
Um maybe I don't know. It's hard to predict a child and like, you know, their
But like
emotions.
murderous rage, but from saying I don't want you to leave to I'm going to murder you like within 10 seconds.
Yeah, it feels like something has possessed her in that moment. Like it feels like it's not even of her own free will.
Well, or maybe she like again, like sometimes if you get mad at someone, you may say, "Yeah, I want you to die," whatever. You know what I mean? But it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a serious thing. You're just saying it as words essentially, right? And
Yeah.
so maybe like I don't, and I would have to probably go back and double check this, but I don't know if how like they kind of like didn't show her actually doing anything with like they kind of showed her throw like starting the fire, but not really. Also, how do you make again? How is it so structurally unstable that a fire can just so easily start without
Yeah.
anything else being involved?
Yeah.
So, like one of the potential things, and again, I'd be interested to hear what you think about this, but we know they were kind of lurking around the premises before, right?
Mhm.
Maybe they did, like maybe they set up like thermal detonators or something, right? And that like maybe the fire set them off, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And maybe that's what happened, right? Or they did, or something like that,
So
where they,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like they did, it was something where it was like, oh, yeah, no, this was exacerbated by the fire, sure, but the fire should not have done the damage that it did, right?
Yeah. And also just things that May has said in like the first episode, like when I think it's Master Indira is like, Jedi do not kill the unarmed or the defenseless, and May says, yes, you do. Like this and indicates something personal, that like what happened to the coven was not May and was maybe the Jedi had something to do with it.
Well, and the other part of it was the second master, who I don't remember the name of right now, was he she said, you feel guilty and you're going to drink this and kill yourself to relieve yourself of the guilt, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, I don't know this for a fact, but I don't think the Jedi, like, just because one kid died, and the kid that started the fire died, would mean that the fight, like, that the kid almost, like, that they felt guilty about killing her, like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know if they feel
Yeah.
guilty killing the witches, or
It, it,
letting the witches die or anything.
it, yeah. It would have to be bigger than just one person.
Well, one person who they weren't even directly responsible for killing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, which I actually just thought of now. So, the Jedi Council, especially historically, they're very callous. And what I mean by that
Mhm.
is they don't really care about, like, the Jedi have never taken people's feelings or emotions into account when making a decision, right? That is
Mhm.
kind of the philosophy behind them, right? They
Mhm.
literally kept kids from their parents. I mean, regardless of how moral of a thing it is in terms of what they're trying to do, that's what they do. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting because maybe they're, like, it feels like they've kind of used the sisters in a sense for
Mhm.
their own means, because I don't know if they would have let Osha go with the Jedi. I don't think they would have,
Yeah.
because they never said, like, they said, we will discuss it, and that's when everything went down. They never actually said, yeah, you can go,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe, like, if it would not be out of the realm of possibilities, if they, really felt like they needed to make this kid a Jedi, that they
Mhm.
would do something seemingly evil, to from a objective standpoint, of, like, basically making her have no choice but to go with them because her entire family is dead,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Which, again, I know sounds crazy, but it's not out, like, the Jedi are on that line of being evil in a sense, right? Like, that's why it's so easy for them to become evil, because
Mhm.
they're always, like, on that line in everything, because they make such, you know emotionless decisions, that all it takes is a little bit of emotion with those decisions, suddenly you're evil, right?
Mhm.
So it is an interesting kind of, again, it kind of speaks to Jedi as like, as the council, and it's awesome. I love it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna lie. I love it.
Yeah.
The other thing, I don't know, maybe I'm stretching too far with this, but do you think there's any chance that that this witch clan is any descendant of the Dathomirian witches?
I had wondered that because it said they had been exiled, so they had to have come from somewhere.
Well, that's the thing, and again, I'm not gonna presume that every witch is the same, but
Mhm.
I wouldn't, like, we we know because of Ahsoka that those witches had not been on Dathomir forever,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Right, because, like, we learned in Ahsoka that they had a greater, like, they were more spread out at one point, because that's how, we have what's her face?
Morgan Elsbeth.
Morgan Elsbeth, thank you. And kind of helping Thrawn on the side, right? Like it's and then all of the, I guess spirits or whatever who are helping out Thrawn in the other world where he was trapped, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it shows that they clearly used to be more spread out, but they just kind of became almost, isolated on Dathomir,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so it would be interesting if that was like, again, assuming that they kind of operate in a way where they're kind of like a bunch of different covens of witches almost, and then but they all kind of are interrelated species wise. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It'd be interesting if this was kind of the start of that kind of, almost vilification of them. Again, they are evil, basic on what they're portrayed as, but
Mm-hmm.
it would be interesting if this was the start of the vilification of them, right as the Jedi become more militant with who uses the Force, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, not to get it all nerdy on this, but it is again a very interesting thing that the Jedi are so, like, you see the Jedi become very militant on who uses the Force, right? There's only certain people who are allowed to use the Force in the Jedi's mind, and if you're being a Jedi, then you're allowed to use the Force. Otherwise, no,
Yeah.
right? That is kind of
Which is why they had such a problem with the kids.
Well, right, and why they have such a problem with the witches in general, to the point where they're stalking the witches, right?
Yeah.
Because they have this idea of the right way to use the Force. Again, it is a very interesting political kind of message in Star Wars to some extent, where it's kind of like there is the like just because you're very on the side of like this is the only way you can do it, it becomes very close to kind of what the Empire did, right? What the Jedi did, this was not very far from what the Empire did. Right?
Mm-hmm.
They just said the only people who can use the Force are us,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just people we train. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of a step further, and what they did to people who, like, the Jedi didn't do the same kind of things to the people who use the Force in different ways, but than what the Empire did. But again, I don't know, very fascinating. I'm sure I'm boring the hell out of so many people, probably including you, but apologize for that one.
It's interesting.
Was there anything else in this episode that you wanted to talk about?
No, that was the big thing. That was the, you know.
I'm trying to think, like, was there anything else? I mean, yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm just interested to see how culpable Soul is in this, in what the Jedi
how
did.
culpable all of them are.
Yeah, how, but like especially him, because I can't tell if like what his guilt comes from. Is it just that like he was there and didn't stop them, or was it like that he was directly involved in what they did?
I think it was I think whatever happened is going to turn out to be an accident, but a very bad one. Again, maybe like the thermal detonator thing, where like they had planned to potentially blow the place up to try to scare them off, but then the fire set off one of them, or they changed their mind or something, right? And I think again, it would not necessarily, because like I don't believe that they would be guilty of like active murder, but I think maybe an accident which they were responsible for.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Guess we'll see.
Yeah. Now, let's just talk, just before we move on to the next episode, let's just go through MVP of the episode. That first one, Destiny.
I really liked Mother Anastasis. She was cool.
Yeah, I can agree with that one. But I'm going to go with May. I think this was May's big episode.
Yeah, she was cool too.
She might get another big episode, but I think this was probably, like, I think this is where you really saw, her desire to become one of the members. And I think it really spoke to who she was, right? How loyal she was to her family. And again, it kind of made her seem like a good guy to some extent, right?
Yeah.
Where
yeah.
In theory, again, she's being loyal to her family. She's doing all these things which typically you would not say is what a bad guy does, right? But yet we understand that she is not a good person, or like at least she's not doing good things. So I would probably have to give it to May. Also, weirdly, the second time I give it to May, but it's okay. Yeah, so I think that's probably it for me. Okay,
Yeah.
let's go into the next one. This was a crazy episode.
Yeah, it was. For an
I don't
episode
know.
for an episode that had so much like walking and talking, like it was so
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, it's 5 minutes at the end, which basically make the whole episode.
Yeah.
Um. So where do you want to start with this one? I want to end with the end of the episode. Let's start
Okay.
with the beginning. So, what did you think of all the walking and talking?
I thought it was done really well in a way that like I was still engaged with it. Um, regardless of like it being a walk and talking episode. Like if you do a walking and talking episode correctly, then you can create some really interesting character moments for everyone if it's done well. And I feel like it was done well here, and I um was interested. Like I didn't feel bored. I mean, I think May and the other guy, the guy she was walking with, I found myself drifting a little bit during those parts because I don't like
Care.
I still haven't developed the ability to care. I mean, like, they're interesting, but they're not like characters I care about at this. I mean, they're really important to the story, but they're not like my main interest.
Well, also May's kind of a jerk,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of it, right? Like May being a jerk kind of makes it hard to, I guess, like want to defend them.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's kind of weird,
Hmm.
but I think if May was less of a jerk or was like a little bit more of a human being, then it would probably work better. Now, the one moment I think which May did really well, I think, was that moment where she became a good guy quickly.
I was
Because,
confused by that. I
what do
was
you mean?
confused by how quickly that happened. It felt like the flip of a switch, and it felt like there wasn't much development to bring her there.
Okay, can I defend it? Because
And
I
maybe
think it was
that's
done
just me.
perfectly.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so this is the thing. If the way I reason I like it so much because it feels like what a normal teenager kind of person would do, right? So if let's just say hypothetically, right, you have someone who is following some sort of like teacher, right, of some sort, right,
Mhm.
and you're a teenager, and then all of a sudden you're somewhere and this teacher's nowhere around you. You're like, wait, or your parent or whatever. You're like, why am I following these rules? How are they going to find out?
Mhm.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Why am I listening to why am I listening to what they told me? Because they're not here right now, right?
Mhm.
And wait, I want to go do that thing. I'm gonna go do that thing. I who's gonna stop me? They're not gonna be. You tell me they're gonna be able to get all. Like that mentality. I think is so almost underseen in Star Wars because everything is so militant and so disciplined. Again, the fact that Anakin was the most like Anakin kind of did this a little bit, but even then was still kind of often under the watchful eye of some other Jedi. And I think
Mhm.
it's always
Mhm.
interesting to see kind of a kid who's a bad guy, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
they you do think like, wait a second, my map. You're telling me that guy I've never seen, he's gonna be able to get all the way here?
Mhm.
Like, look how hard it was for me to get here, and I'm probably better than he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's why it was so perfect because I think she like had that light bulb moment where she realized, oh, he's not here. Why am I scared of him?
Yeah.
You just stand somewhere and you look how hard it was for me to get here. There's no way in hell he's gonna be able to make it. And I think that's kind of like I think that moment, like I think she kind of started where she's like, yeah, I really miss my sister, you know. And I assume this guy probably told him that her sister was dead,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And she's kind of like, oh yeah, I miss my sister, and she is alive now.
Mhm.
Wait, why am I doing this then? I was supposed to be getting revenge because, again, in theory, I think she thinks that they killed her sister,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, if that's her view, and it's like, well, they didn't do that. Wait, why am I trying to kill them? Why am I trying to do all these tests?
Mhm.
Right? It's like I don't want to do the homework. I want to go play. like I understand that. Like I actually think that is a very reasonable and honestly more realistic kind of interpretation of a kid kind of realizing again the adult's not around. I don't have to do what they're telling me to do.
Yeah, I'd buy that.
I think that's why it was so well done in that sense. Again, I understand what you're saying, kind of where it's like, it is kind of sudden, but I also think that's how a kid would realize it, right? Like I think they would kind of like have these ideas like, yeah, I really love my sister. Wait, I don't have she got dead. Oh, wait, that means that he was lying, which means I don't have to do all this stuff. Oh, cool, bye. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think that work. I think it would in reality be a light bulb moment, and so that's why I think it worked as a light bulb moment.
Yeah, I think it was just. I think the show has just done such a good job at making her such an untrustworthy narrator, like perspective, that I was like the whole time she was like, "Osha being alive changes everything." I was like, "You're you're lying to him, right? Like you're like I could not trust a word she said." So that really impacted how I saw it. Was like I was not trusting her the whole time until she was actually going to surrender herself, and then I was like, oh, she wasn't lying. Like,
And what's interesting actually? Now that I thought about it, Disney Star Wars has done this now twice, and I think I think people don't like it because it breaks this kind of militant tradition in their mind of how people are supposed to behave in Star Wars. But it is more realistic, right? And I think the first time you saw this was with Kylo Ren, right?
mhm,
Because think about Kylo Ren and what happened with him, because he was someone who had a master, Snoke, and
mhm,
what did he do? Hey, wait, this old dude is telling me what to do. Why am I listening? I'm just gonna kill him. I'm
yep,
stronger than he is. He's just sitting there in a chair.
yep,
Right. And I think that is something that Star Wars did. And I think like with Kylo Ren, right? And we saw that with The Last Jedi, where he kills Snoke and he basically just does whatever the hell he wants to do.
mhm,
Right.
mhm,
And I don't think that's and people obviously got mad about that. But I
yep,
mean, I don't think that's a problem because I think again, anyone with that kind of mentality, you're telling me they would not be like, why am I like the whole idea of the Sith is the rule of two came about because they would all start killing each other, right? The apprentice kills the master and then becomes the master. That's a whole rule of two thing.
mhm,
So I think that it makes perfect sense. Like obviously you're trying to now something's not as explicit, but generally you're not gonna listen to you're a bad guy too. You know what I mean? You want to do your
mhm,
own thing. You want
mhm.
to be the master. Darth Vader tried to. You know how many times? I don't think any of this actually can. But you know how many times Darth Vader tried to kill Palpatine?
A lot of times, a
In
lot.
Legends, Darth Vader trained Star Killer to try to kill Palpatine, to maybe his apprentice to kill Palpatine. Like Darth Vader trained multiple people to try to kill Palpatine. Darth Vader tried to convince Luke to help him kill Palpatine
Yeah.
to become his apprentice and join the dark side.
Mhm.
Hell, Palpatine tried to get Luke to kill Vader to become his apprentice. Like we
Yeah.
act like this is just some new thing that just Disney decided to do with Star Wars, when in reality, disobedience didn't like didn't Dooku train Asajj Ventress literally to kill Palpatine?
I think so.
Didn't Palpatine bring back Darth Maul to kill Dooku or someone?
I don't remember. I don't remember with Maul. I don't.
He definitely did. He definitely tried to bring Maul back to do something, but
Mhm.
like he tried to recruit Maul back again, but then Maul tried to kill him, and then he killed Maul's brother, and then tortured Maul. But yeah, that's my point. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous because it's like that's literally what has happened in Star Wars since it
The beginning.
started.
Yeah.
And if we think the bad guys are just going to all be very disciplined when they the other one thinks they're more powerful than their master, like you can go back to like again the rule of two when it started with with all the old Sith lords, right? Yeah, they would kill their master because they would want to have an apprentice, and then their apprentice would kill them, and that's the circle of life, so to speak, for a Sith. Sorry, I just realized that everyone's arguments about how Kylo Ren is a bad villain are completely ridiculous, and so I just had to go
Yep.
off on that
Yeah.
tangent. But yeah, again, it's ridiculous because this is like it makes sense, and it all makes sense now, and so yeah.
Mhm.
Um, now let's talk about the other side of things, because the Jedi also came to this planet, and they were led by a dog, but not really a dog, but just their version of a dog, which is a little rodent creature, I guess.
Yeah.
So what did you think of their, I guess, reinvention of the dog, the tracking
Um,
dog?
I thought it was cute.
So I like what Star Wars does this when they basically say, "Hey, this is this concept that you know as an animal really well, right?
Yeah.
Like a tracking dog, right? That's something everyone pretty much knows, right?
Yeah.
It's not like a novel concept." And they're like, "But we're just gonna make it a very different kind of animal. Maybe ideally one we could sell as a toy to a lot of people."
Yeah.
And I think it works really like it. That's when I think they kind of do it. They do the kind of merchandising right. It's when
Mhm.
they kind of turn to something that's very well. And you saw this again with the original trilogy, right? Where they would turn like they would say, "Hey, this is a horse, but instead of a horse, it's got two legs and it's white and it goes around in snow planets,
Mhm.
and we're gonna call it a tauntaun."
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
they would take something where it's like this is something but
Yep.
it's here instead,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And so I that part I absolutely loved, and I think that was something again which Star Wars has been doing forever, and I think they did it again really well.
Yep.
And I think again we got to give them credit when they do something like when they have those moments of like, wow, these are the things you don't realize until you see them happen again, and then you're like, wow,
Yep.
that's what Star Wars does, right? Like it just takes real things, real animals,
Mhm.
and just changes what they look like, adapts them to a planet, and calls it a day.
Yep.
And I'm sure, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure that there are tracking dogs that run away from the people who are, trying to track, and they've got to find the dog. Like I'm sure that happens often.
Mhm. Mhm.
So again, it's not, like it's always very fascinating to see how that kind of, yeah, it's good. I like the way they did that.
Mhm.
The other thing is like it feels like they're using OSHA a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something going on there.
Yeah.
Because there's this one moment, and I don't know if I think this is kind of either I'm overblowing this or people have not paid attention enough to this. But what like there's a conversation, right, with OSHA and her master or her former master,
Mhm.
where he's like, we're gonna get you, and once we get your sister's ship, I'll tell you whatever, like what you need to know. And it's very like, suspicious almost.
Mhm.
Do you remember that conversation?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Did that not raise your eyebrow a little bit? Like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah, I was curious. I'm still curious.
Because I don't think people talk about that are talking about that enough. Because I think that's kind of like a like. I'll be honest with you. You know what my first thought was when I heard that conversation?
What?
I was like, oh, he's the bad guy. He's the Jedi who's been training them.
Interesting.
That was the first. Now I don't know if that could be true. I mean, we'll talk about that in a minute. But um, that was my first thought because that's what it seemed like. It was like I don't want to get caught, and he seemed also very like against the idea of like traveling, to the planet because and or against the idea of like there being a Jedi who is training them, right? Like a former Jedi who is training them,
Yeah.
right? He seemed to be very against that,
Yeah.
and it all seemed very weird, very weird. So it would be it, and I don't think it's off the board, even though we've seen him and the theoretical bad guy. I don't think it's off the board that that is still the case.
But we also saw him in like the second episode going into May's mind and discovering the fact that her master was hiding his identity from her.
Yeah, but we've seen Jedi pretend. Like we don't. It. She. That's a very easy thing to pretend, right?
Yeah, I just find it hard to believe that he would.
I mean, like again, and the other thing is like he could literally be telling the truth because May wouldn't know who he is, right? And
Mhm.
it could be more of a, hey, I'm just making sure that you don't know who I am. Like, does that if you get caught, you can't give anything away.
I mean, maybe.
I don't think that's out of the like. I don't think that's like if it were true. Like I don't think. I mean, there would be people who could complain, but I don't think that would be like all like any evidence that would end any kind of like potential for that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when we get at the end, let's talk about do you want to talk about anything before we talk about like the end of the episode?
No, I think we should talk about the end.
Okay, let's start with the end. So they finally get to their destination, and May goes in to kill the Wookiee Jedi or surrender the Wookiee Jedi or whatever she was planning on doing.
Mhm.
And she sees the Wookiee Jedi who is dead with a lightsaber, like like thing in the chest.
Mhm.
By the way, Jedi not really dissolving the way they used to, really like surviving a long time after they get killed.
Mhm.
Very anti Obi-Wan, where Obi-Wan dies and literally vanishes, but
Mhm.
and Yoda dies and literally vanishes. Jedi really lasting a little bit longer nowadays.
Yeah.
But regardless, very dead. So much so that someone could probably put the Wookiee on their wall until the Wookiee vanishes, as Jedi do.
Mhm.
And instantly, May knows the Master is here. Then everyone kind of arrives, and then everything becomes dark, and everything becomes scary because the Master has arrived. And the Master comes down very much like a Death Eater from Harry Potter, that kind
Mhm.
of vibe,
Yeah.
and ignites a lightsaber right in front of Osha's face.
Mhm.
May's scared and frightened of all the things, and every Jedi who's there puts up their lightsabers, and then this Jedi ghost thing forces them all away in a very powerful force thing.
Yeah.
And then the episode ends. So, what do we think? Who's the Jedi or evil Jedi person?
The main theory I've been seeing is that it's the guy she was with. Um, I don't know his
Nah,
name.
I don't buy it. I don't like it.
I don't like him either.
No, I don't like that theory. I think that's a bad theory. I think whoever's saying that is no. That'd be disappointing.
I have no idea who it is. Um, but the helmet was freaking creepy.
A Kylo Ren-esque helmet, I was gonna
Yeah.
say. I still believe that it's one of the main Jedi, and the one everyone knows who I think it is at this point. But now you may be saying, well, how can it be Master Soul if Master Soul is right there when the Jedi or the Sith or whatever we're gonna call this evil person, the Master, opens their lightsaber, right? How could that be possible? Well, guess what? Do you know what the most interesting part of all this was?
What?
The lightsaber was never used. Laser came very, very close to someone's face and was never used.
Yeah.
The only thing that happened was there was the shadowy figure with a mask on, and the Force was used.
Mhm.
Now, is it possible for a Jedi to, project images? Yes.
Yeah.
We've seen it happen before. So is it possible that Master Soul could literally have created an image through the Force, and it was no more than nothing more than an illusion? Because again, we know the Force can be manipulated in a way where it seems like someone who doesn't exist is using the Force. Do you know how we know that? Do you know when we saw that?
Um, I can't name it off the top of my head, but I know that we've
We
seen it.
we saw it with Luke Skywalker
Yeah.
in The Last Jedi. Do you
Yes.
remember when
Yes.
Luke was there was a ghost Luke? Luke was not there. And guess what? We all thought it was Luke. To the point where a whole bunch of angry people on the internet started crying when it wasn't Luke.
Mhm.
And guess what happened? The lightsaber was there. Everything was there. But it wasn't Luke. It was a Force projection. So you're
Mhm.
telling me that Master Soul could not have done that?
I mean, it could have.
I'm just saying. I think it's a good theory.
I find it hard to see him doing that, but he could.
Especially if maybe something happened on that planet. And, they all felt, this is the thing, they all felt guilty in their own ways, right? One of them, again, took a vow of silence. One of them isolated themselves on a planet, where they could be alone.
Mm-hmm.
One of them just went off to do their own thing. The one person who seemed to not really feel all that guilty about any of this?
Him.
Yeah, I mean, he's just kind of like he is still training people. He's taken on another apprentice. He seems to be very not broken up about it. He took on Osha as his apprentice. He seems to be fine. He seems to be handling what's made everybody else very traumatized just fine. Does that not seem suspicious at all?
I mean, it could be.
Like, he literally, like, these people, literally, a Jedi took a vow of silence and then drank poison because of the guilt. Master Soul, literally, yeah, he says some things which you're like, okay, maybe he's a little guilty. This dude, and potentially has been lying to Osha's face about how her family died for basically her entire life. And has no guilt. It's something. I think it's something. Because guess what? If you were secretly, your guilt was coming out as being an evil Sith Lord, I'd make it that'd be a good way to kind of, mask your guilt.
Mm-hmm.
For evil Jedi, I guess, because we don't call them Sith. But I don't know. What do you like? Do you think that's a possibility?
I think it's possible.
Do you feel it's more possible now that you've kind of heard my argument for it than before?
Yeah, maybe.
I think it would be fun.
I also think that, like, I don't have a very, like, deep theory, but, like, I wondered that maybe it was one of the witches who had survived.
Ooh, I like that.
The
That's interesting, actually. I do kind of like that.
it's not a very deep theory, but it was the one thing that did pop into my head.
Interesting. And so one of the witches who potentially survived. But then why would but so I guess we're kind of assuming we know May didn't do it. They know May didn't do it. And May knows May didn't kill everyone, and they're kind of using her. Interesting. Okay, so then I have a question for you. And I know you haven't fleshed out this theory. Maybe this would be a way to kind of flesh it out. If it is one of the witches, then why are they using a lightsaber?
I'm not sure.
But there doesn't have to be an answer, but I'm wondering, like, if there's something you've thought of, like,
maybe it's because those witches seemed very they liked to mock the Jedi, and because they believed that the Jedi believe that the Force is a right that only some people can use, and this is a way of, like, see, I have a Jedi weapon and I'm using a Jedi weapon, but I'm not a Jedi, so like a way of, like, mocking them.
It's interesting, and I kind of like this theory, and I'm going to kind of build on it a little bit. Now I don't know if this is canon or if they've changed it, but I think that the way that the crystal became red initially was through the Force, right? Wasn't it like some corruption through the Force that made it red?
Mm-hmm.
Like would make a regular lightsaber crystal red?
Yeah, I think so.
So if that's the case, then again, I haven't done the research on that specific thing, but my mind is just remembering some kind of versions of that being the case. And if that is true, then it would make sense that one of the people who could potentially, and we know eventually started becoming artificially crafted, but one of the people who could eventually, you could be theoretically someone who, I guess, maybe was able to make a regular lightsaber red, right?
Mhm.
Was a witch, right?
Mhm.
Someone who used more of a mystical kind of view of I guess the force, right? Like that would be someone who have the knowledge, I guess, to maybe accurately corrupt a crystal.
Mhm.
So that would be, and the other part of it, which I actually just thought of now, is when they did that ceremony, right? The
Mhm.
mother kind of got like her life force seemed to kind of get absorbed by the moon or something. Like there
Mhm.
was some kind of like thing going on there.
Mhm.
And maybe what that meant was that she, wasn't like some of her was like kind of trapped. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
And so when she died physically, that was able to kind of come back and maybe re-inhabit like a dead version of the body,
Mhm.
and which would explain kind of why, again, we see this person kind of float in, right? We
Mhm.
don't see them walk in. We see them float in. We also don't see their face or any part of their body, so we don't know what their body looks like. Could their body potentially be burned or kind of dead, right?
Mhm.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe.
Like ghosts don't have to be like, they could be semi-solid. We've seen Star Wars ghosts, Force ghosts, interact with objects and stuff, right?
Yep.
So it's not out of the realm possibilities that like she's a kind of half ghost type thing, and is kind of, you know, wearing a helmet so that people can't see that.
Mhm.
Or again, maybe it is a Vader situation where she's being burned, and or one of them is being burned, and so that's kind of the situation with them.
Yeah.
I actually like that theory too.
Yeah.
It's a good theory.
I like that.
Now, what do you think's gonna? What do you think we're gonna get in the next episode?
I have no idea. I think the only thing I think is going to happen, like the only thing I feel strongly of, is that the next episode is this episode was called Day. I think the next episode is going to be called Night.
Ooh, I like that. I hope that's right because that would be nice.
That's what I think. It's
I
not.
I do
I
like that.
don't know what's going to happen plot wise, but we've seen the day on that planet. Now it's time to see the night because we saw like how the day was ending near the end of the episode, and now it's dark.
And the other interesting thing, yeah, maybe maybe this is nothing, but Mother and Annie say whatever her name
Mhm.
is according to IMDb at least credited for 5 episodes.
Oh,
1, 3, 5, 6, and 7.
so we're gonna see her next episode.
We're gonna see her 5, 6, and 7.
Hmm.
So if there was a way to kind of you know if there was some way to make your theory a little more valid,
Yeah.
I mean, that would absolutely be a way to do it.
Mhm.
The other, again, and I don't, IMDb has a tendency sometimes to be completely inaccurate on things like this,
Mhm.
but Master Soul is only credited for episodes 1 through 4.
Interesting.
So again, it's very hard to say because IMDb again has been, historically can be very wrong because it's very easy to edit IMDb and
Yeah.
and add and get rid of things.
Yeah.
I do think it's noteworthy at the very least that, the main witch and mother of the two main characters who we saw die is credited not only for 1 episode, but for the next 3 episodes,
Yeah.
which I think is also every episode, the rest of the episodes all the way through.
Except 8.
Is there 8?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I thought there was only 7. Um, so at least the next 3. So, you know,
Mhm.
I that does seem very noteworthy.
Yeah.
Um, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that because again, you know, that I didn't think too much about that theory, but now that you've kind of made me think about it, and now that I've seen this, I think maybe there's something much more to this.
Yeah.
But I think, who's the MVP for this episode for you?
For me, it was Jackie. Um, I really thought she had some really interesting character moments this episode. Um, and I think she had a really powerful quote that went something like, we're not defined by what we lose, we're defined by what we survive. And that really spoke to me, and I thought it was beautiful, and I liked it. So
yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny how we didn't talk about her at all, basically, this entire.
Yeah, but like, I love her, so.
She played a massive role in this, not only setting up kind of, I guess this whole mission and OSHA's kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was all kind of predicated on what Jackie kind of said to her, and that kind of relationship that's being built.
Mm-hmm.
But man, Daphne Keane can act, and that's just, she does such a great job, and it's like, it's so great to see people thriving in Star Wars, and I hope she doesn't die, because I would love to see her more and more and more.
Me too.
Now, for me, I feel like I want to say Jackie. I'm gonna go with. Man, this is hard. Should I go with Quimir? Yeah, I'll go with that. The random dude who just shows up and gets hung upside down and doesn't do much. I don't know why.
He talks
I just feel like there must be like there's more to the character.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is. I don't know what more there is. But clearly there's more, and I'm missing something. So I think I do think that there has been an interesting kind of like, I think I'm more interested by his character now than I was in any of the first few episodes, because I want to know kind of more about what his situation is and why he's doing this, because I don't know why he would be doing this, right? He isn't just some smuggler, like, dude. He also is giving very sage advice to her about, to May about, maybe about how maybe she could pass this test, right?
Mm-hmm.
And seems to be kind of a guide. And I guess that's kind of where the theory that he's the bad guy kind of comes from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is this idea that he is giving her this advice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, he did also run into her trap, which is a little bit weird, but I again, maybe that was all part of his plan, but it doesn't feel like something a Sith Lord would do, or an evil person. I guess I can't call him Sith, but like, what an evil person would do, like an evil Jedi Master would do. Also, I like, the thing I find hard to believe is that, and again, we do have evidence of the fact that this could be the case, regardless. But I feel like if he was someone who was a former Jedi, the fact that there have been so many people who've seen him, including the fact that he was, posted as someone who's wanted for, whatever.
Yeah.
I find it hard to believe they wouldn't have recognized him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if the former Jedi thing is the situation, someone would have recognized him, right? Like, I assume. So that's the only hesitancy I have, is like, you would, like, if there's some former Jedi hang out with an evil person, like someone who we know is evil, we'd kind of like, it's a little suspicious here. But other than that, I mean, I think I think he's an interesting character. And I think there is more to him. I don't know what it is. Maybe he was going to become a Jedi or something, or maybe, he had family that became Jedi, or he has some gripe with the Jedi, I feel like. But it'd be interesting to see more of what happens with him. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I think we covered everyone pretty well.
Yeah.
So with that, unless you have anything else to say about either of these episodes or the next episode.
Nope.
Good. Perfect. Then with that being said, thank you all for watching. We got through an hour with two episodes, so that's pretty good. We will be back probably next week to talk about the next episode. Yeah, who knows when, but we'll be back at some point.
Yep.
Maybe Tuesday, who knows? Or Wednesday. Yeah, we could probably make it work Tuesday, but maybe we'll see. but yeah, thank you all for watching, and subscribe, like, follow us on social media. All of the information is in the podcast description or the YouTube description, and see you all next time. Bye.